Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another video. I'm Sally and this is Secret Life of a Seamstress. I hope you're all well. So today's video is going to be the next in my short little mini series called My Top 5. And today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 tools for sewing. So these are things that I use all the time. Obviously I have quite a lot of sewing tools like we probably all do, but today I'm just going to be sharing with you the ones that I kind of reach for time and again and the ones that I find most helpful when I'm sewing. If you are new to my channel is all about sewing. I post lots of sewing videos, sew-alongs, chat about sewing, fabric hauls, things I've been making and things like that. Sometimes with a bit of knitting thrown in as well. If you haven't already, I'd love you to consider subscribing and please don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos, and I'd love it if you enjoy the video if you could give it a like at the end. And if you are a regular viewer of my channel, thank you so much for joining me again today. As always, I'll just share with you what I'm wearing today. Today I'm wearing a really old Sew Over It poppy play suit, which I made from a rayon which I picked up in John Lewis years and years ago in one of their sales, and it was really cheap. So I thought I'd have a go at making a Sew Over It poppy play suit in culotte length. And you're not going to be able to see me wearing it culotte length, obviously, but I'll just pop in a picture of what the play suit looks like culotte length, and I really like it this length. And I keep thinking that I need to make another one, but as usual I haven't quite got around to it yet. But yeah, this is a very old Sew Over It poppy play suit. So my first and probably most favourite ever sewing tool is this Pattern Master. So this is a liquid draw Pattern Master. I picked it up on Amazon quite a few years ago now and it's been very well used. It's quite scratched actually in places because I use it literally all the time. So there's quite a few things that I use this for. Obviously I use it for cutting out because it has a straight edge there. So I can use it for sort of cutting out fabric on my cutting mat with my rotary cutter. But I also find it really good for making alterations. So an alteration I do quite a lot is to change the shoulder seam on garments because I sometimes find that they come out a bit too far on my shoulders. So this is really useful for kind of grading in on a pattern, and I normally like to mark the end of the shoulder seam, how much I want to take in with the kind of ruler at the top there, and then using this curve here you can grade down to the armhole and where it ends, kind of under the arm. I'll just show you here holding it up. And that's a really useful tool, particularly if, like me, you're making the same kind of adjustment over and over again. And that's a really good one to do as well if you want to change a garment from having sleeves to making it sleeveless, because sometimes you need to just alter the shoulder seam allowance just to take in the armhole a little bit to make the sleeve line more flattering. So this has a really good ruler on it as well, so it has a 0 in the middle. Hopefully you can see that if I hold it up there. You might not be able to. But yeah, it has a really good ruler on it where there's a 0 in the middle, and then it kind of counts out from 1 to 20 either side. So that's really helpful as well when you're measuring things and you want an equal distance from both of the midpoints. And it also has a 45-degree angle mark on it, so if you're ever cutting anything on the bias, it's really useful to kind of put the selvage of your fabric on that line and then you can cut along the bias, which is really good as well. So I just find that I use this ruler for so many things and I find it really helpful. So everything that I'm talking about I will link down below just in case you're interested and you want to pop over and see the items for yourself. I think most of the things I'm going to be talking about I did actually buy from Amazon so I'll link them below, but obviously there are other places that you can buy these things from as well. I'm sure Minerva and places like Guthrie Garney and other independent sewing shops will all stock things like this too. Number 2 on my list are these little Clover chalk pens. So I've had these for so long and probably like most of us I've tried different forms of pattern marking. I've tried carbon paper, I've tried chalk pencils, I've tried the markers that are supposed to disappear when you put water on them, which sometimes don't. Well, that's what I found anyway. I haven't really enjoyed using those. And of course there's the really old-fashioned kind of square of Tailor's chalk, which is really good as well. But I find these really good because they don't get all over your hands. So if I just open one up, you can see that at the top there, hopefully you can see that, there's a little wheel at the top which just kind of distributes the chalk. So you would draw onto your fabric and then the wheel would kind of make the chalk come out and onto your fabric. And I just find them really kind of precise. They're not too thick, and because the wheel is really thin, you get a really nice, accurate, thin line. And I think the idea of these is that actually you can replace the chalk. But I've had these for about 3 or 4 years and I've never had to replace the chalk so far. They come in lots of different colours, so I've got a pink one which is good for lighter fabrics, and then I've got a white one which is really good for darker fabrics and blacks and navies and things like that. And I use them for marking darts. So the way that I tend to mark darts is to make a little notch at the end of the dart, and then I'll make a little pinprick at the point of the dart, which I'll then mark with a pencil, and then I'll join up my lines with these chalk pencils. And the good thing about these is that although they don't tend to brush off really easily if you leave your markings on for a little while before you get around to sewing, they are kind of really easy to brush off when you finish with your lines, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I find they're permanent enough to kind of keep your markings on your pattern or on your fabric until you get around to sewing, but then they're really easy to brush off or just wipe off with a damp cloth or something when you're finished. So these are the Clover chalk pencils, and I'll link those down below as well. Third on my list is something that took me absolutely ages to be convinced to buy, is a Tailor's ham. So this is something that I just thought, oh, I don't need one of those, I don't know why people use them, I'm never going to want one of those. And then I had this for my birthday and I realised exactly why people do use them. Because they're so handy for pressing any kind of curve. So I use mine for pressing out a sleeve curve at the top of your armhole. I used to be really naughty and try and press mine kind of flat on the ironing board, or I'd be trying to manoeuvre my tiny little armhole around the big bulky end of the ironing board, and it just wasn't good at all, and I don't know why it took me so long to buy one of these. But yeah, I find this really helpful. When I was making my coat as well, I used this quite a lot just for all the curved seams that were in that. And anything that you have really that's curved, anything that's kind of rounded, like if you're making something really tiny like baby's clothing or children's clothing, it can be often quite hard to manoeuvre that around the ironing board. So I use this quite a lot just for ironing out small areas of garments as well. It's also really good for pressing out darts, because obviously when you're putting in a dart, you're obviously putting it in a kind of curved area of a bodice. It's not a flat thing to iron out all the time. So yeah, it's really helpful for kind of ironing out darts as well. So if you haven't been convinced enough to buy a Tailor's ham yet, I highly recommend that you get one, because your sewing life will be changed for the better. I'm actually thinking of getting the sleeve version of this as well, because I do have a small flat sleeve ironing board thing which I use, but I'm thinking that the curved one would be really good as well. So if you have one of those, let me know, and let me know if I should buy one. But yeah, that's my third item, it's the Tailor's ham. Fourth on my list are pattern weights. So this might seem quite an obvious one, but I would never go back from using pattern weights now. So these are my really pretty ones, and these are by Bridie, and I'll link her Etsy shop down below because they really are very pretty. So these are kind of small tile pattern weights, but you can obviously buy so many different varieties of pattern weights. But I use mine for literally everything now, so I think I find these so much better than pins. They don't mark your fabric. I tend to cut out everything on a cutting mat using a rotary cutter, so I never bother to pin anymore. I just place these all around my pattern and I move them around while I'm cutting, just so that they don't get in the way of my ruler and things like that. But yeah, I just find that these give such a neater finish, because you don't end up with loads of pin snags and pin marks and things like that. And I often find as well that with pins it can kind of make your fabric wrinkle up a little bit while you're cutting, so I much prefer to use pattern weights. I also use these when I'm tracing as well. I'm sure lots of people do that. I use them to weight down my pattern, and then I use them to weight down my tracing paper on top as well, just so that the paper and everything doesn't move around while I'm tracing, and I find them really handy. So that's number 4, pattern weights. Number 5 is something that's quite new to me actually. It's something that I bought quite recently and then wondered why I'd not bought sooner, and it's this little seam gauge thing. Seam gauge thing, that's the technical name for it. But I bought this recently from Hobbycraft and I find it so handy. It's really good for kind of measuring the equal distance between buttonholes, because this little marker thing in the middle will move up and down, so you can quite easily mark between your buttonholes if you put this along your button band, and then you mark in equal places down your button band where your buttons should go. I find that really handy, and for some reason it's much easier than just using a ruler and a chalk pencil or something. It also has this like pointy end, so that's really good if you're ironing something which needs a really crisp point, like a collar or something. It was really helpful when I was making my Lyra dress to get the collar points to kind of point out really nicely. I always used to use a knitting needle, which was really quite silly because sometimes the knitting needle used to poke too far and it would go through the fabric and everything, but this is really quite gentle and it has a kind of curved edge at the top, so you shouldn't really go through your fabric at all. So yeah, that's something that's new to me and I find it really helpful. And then if you're just marking something you need a little straight line for, you can use this as a ruler as well, or a straight edge to mark a buttonhole or something on your garment. And the markings come in centimetres and inches as well, so that's really helpful too. I picked mine up in Hobbycraft, but I think you can probably get them from Amazon or any other kind of independent sewing shop, and I'll link this below as well. So that's it for today, just a really quick video just sharing my top 5 sewing tools and sewing gadgets and the things that I use most in my sewing. I'd love to hear in the comments below what your favourite sewing tools are, because I'm always on the lookout for new sewing gadgets. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you have enjoyed this video please do give it a like. I'll link below all of my other top 5 videos as well, so that you can pop over and watch them if you'd like to enjoy the rest of your day whatever you're doing, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye!